Hello everyone and welcome back. So today we are going to take a look at the Next.13 app router. So basically Next.13 have two documentation. The first thing is the Next.13 app router, which is this website here. You can access this to the beta.next.js.org and also the stable version, which is the next.org/docs. Alright, so we are going to talking about the Next.13 app router, and I think that's really cool here. So let's go to installation and let's see how we can install it. So basically we can running npx create next applettes, and we are going to use this dash experimental app. So let's open the terminal and I'm going to open that and let's make it bigger. I'm going to cd to my documents and develop, and in here I'm going to run the Next.js command here. All right, so we can just copy the npx here and we are going to pasting into the terminal here. All right, just like that. So let's hit enter. So the project name, it should be, let's say, learn Next.13. I'm going to hit enter, and if we want to use TypeScript, I'm going to say yes. Slin, I'm going to say no. And would you like to use source directory? I'm going to say no. And import alias, I'm going to say add here. All right, so let's wait for that. All right, so it's done. Let's open the cd learn next-13, and I'm going to open that into the Visual Studio Code, and here we go. Now let's open the terminal, and in here I'm going to say npm run dev to start the development server. It should be open the localhost 3000 for us. So basically let's go to the app here. So this page.tsx is basically the main of our app, so basically we'll be becoming the root of the path here. All right, so if I change everything here, which is I'm going to remove all this div here, and let's put h1 and I'm going to say home. Okay, and I'm going to remove the style here, we don't need that, and also the image. Okay, let's remove the class name as well, and now we should be able to see this home. And I'm going to remove this model here. Let's delete that. Let's also remove the content inside the global CSS, just like that. So now we just have home here. So how do we create the route? So let's go back to the documentation and let's go to routing here. Let's click the fundamentals. You can read all of this documentation here, and what is really important is you can create a file like a dashboard or analytic, but you should create a file inside the folder here. The name, it should be page.js. All right, so let's go back to the app here, and I'm going to create a folder called, let's do block. Okay, inside this block we should create a file called page.tsx. right? So in here I'm going to say rfc, and let's remove here, and let's go to /block, and let's see what we have, and we have this page. Right, so basically the name of the component here, it doesn't matter, but I think it's the better way to put, like, let's say block. We have block, right? It's pretty cool. So basically let's go back into the documentation, and here we have some structure here, this component hierarchy here. This is really important, I think. So basically inside this block folder or any kind of route you write inside the app here, you can create layout, template, error, loading, not found, and page file. Okay, so the layout is basically the root of the component you have here. The layout should be wrapping the template, should be wrapping the error boundary, the suspense, and also the page here. So let's go back to the block here, and I'm going to create a layout. Let's do layout.tsx, and I'm going to say rfc, and it's going to be our layout. So basically you can change the name to like block layout, and when we see in the browser here, we just have the block layout, because as you can see here, the layout here, it should be returning children. So that's why here we can grab the children like so, and we are going to render the children right here. So we can say children, and we can change the div here to section. It depends on what you style. Okay, so now it should be render the block. All right, and let's go back to here, and I'm going to looking for a layout.js, and here we can add the type of the children. So we can just copy this and let's go back here, and I'm going to put the type here. So children is basically react.react.node. Okay, so it should be remove the warning here. Okay, all right, so another thing is we can add the like error.js here. So error.js here is basically like after we fetch data from the API, if we get some error, it should be render this error.js file. Let's go back to blog here, and I'm going to create a file called error.tsx, and here I'm going to say rfc. So now we are going to fetch data from the API, but before that we are going to, let's go back to the documentation, and let's go back here, and let's looking for data fetching here. Let's go to fundamentals, and here as you can see, the previous Next.js data fetching methods such as get server side props, get static props, and get initial prop are not supported in the new app directory. Right, so we're not gonna use these three function here, but now we can directly fetch the API into the server component. So let's go to the fetching tab here, and let's see the example here. So basically we can fetch data into the page.tsx right here. All right, and before that, as you can see here, we get some error, and they say the error must be in client component. So what that means, the error here, it should be a client component. So if you create file inside the app here, by default it should be server component, but we can change that to client component with use client keyword. All right, so let's go through the error so you can see what I mean. Let's go to error.js here, and let's see here. Okay, so we can add this client, and the error component must be client component. All right, so let's go back to error here, and we can add string called use client here. Okay, just like that. So the error should be gone. All right, and here we can grab couple props, which is error and reset. So let's grab that. In here we can grab the error and also the reset function here, just like that. And the error is basically error, the type error, and the reset is basically function that returning void. All right, so let's just copy this type here, and I'm going to paste that in here. Okay, before we render something to the return here, we can check first. So I'm going to use useEffect here. So let's do useEffect. We can use useEffect because this is a client component. So let's do useEffect, and this useEffect run every time the error happen. Okay, so in here I'm going to just console error. Okay, so let's say console error. So let's do error. All right, and inside this div here we can just returning, let's say heading 2, and I'm gonna say something went wrong. Okay, just like that. Everything look perfectly fine now because we don't get any fetch inside the page.tsx here. So let's do that. So let's go back here, and I'm going to click the fetching here, and here as you can see we can change the function to async, and we can say await until we fetch the data is done. Okay, so basically we can do here we can change the function here to async await function. So let's do that async. We can say const, and then I'm going to say response that equals to fetch. Of course we need to await that, so let's say fetch, and I'm going to fetch the, let's say JSON placeholder here, and I'm going to fetch the, let's say the pose here. So let's click that and copy the URL, paste that in here, and down here we can await for the, let's say const data set equals to await for the response.json. Okay, and down here we can just console log the data. Let's save, and let's go back here. Let's open the inspect, go to console, and I'm gonna refresh. You're not gonna see any response in this console because this is server component, so we can see the result into the terminal. So as you can see here, we get a lot of data here. So I think we can add the limit. Let's do limit to, I'm gonna say 10 data. So if I save and let's take a look down here, it should be showing the 10 data, right? Then here I'm going to map through the data array. So we can say data.map. I get the individual item, and here I'm going to render the card component. We don't have yet. We can create this card component into the root folder here outside the app, because this is going to be the client component. But also you can create that inside the blog here, but of course you need to add the use client keyword to change that to the client component. So I'm going to create that inside the blog here. So I'm going to call that, let's say, card.tsx, and in here I'm going to say rfc, and I'm going to remove the React up here, and also I'm going to import the card from card, and also here I'm going to send the item that equals to item. Okay, just like that, and we get some warning here, okay, because the item has any type. So of course we can add a type here. So I think I'm going to add a file called types dot, let's say .ts, and here I'm going to export interface. Let's give a name e-pose, which is interface pose. Then here I'm going to add the ID. It should be number, and also the title, it should be string, and also the body. Let's do body. This should be string as well. So now let's use this interface pose right here. So we can say interface pose. And we still get an error here. That's because the interface pose, it should be inside the array. Alright, so now let's use that inside a card. So I'm going to destructuring here. So let's say item, and now the error, it should be gone. Alright, let's create interface up here. So I'm gonna do interface. I'm gonna call this let's say interface card, and it's going to be have an item, and the item, it should be come from e-pose types here, right? And also here we can specify the item, it should be use the interface card. So now we can say let's say h2, and I'm gonna say item dot title here, item dot, and we have the suggestion. All right, that's the benefit of TypeScript. And also down here I'm going to render the paragraph text, and it's going to be the item dot body, just like that. And now let's take a look what we have in the browser. And as you can see, guys, that we have the title and also the body here. But I think now I just want to showing the title, because I need to have some another row to showing the detail. So let's go back here. When I click this, it should be opened another row here. It should be slash whatever the ID should be 1, 2, etc. Alright, so now let's create another row inside a block here. I'm going to create a folder called, let's do the ID with square bracket here. So inside this ID, I'm going to create another file. Remember, we should have a file called page.tsx, right? This is really important. So now here we can say rfc, and let's change that to, I'm gonna call this block detail, right? So let's save that. So let's go back here, and when I go through the /1, it should be rendered the block detail. Okay, cool. How that we can get these params here, which is 1 or 2 or any kind of param here. Basically, let's go back to define a row here. Let's scroll down, and so as you can see in the detail of the page here, we have the props called params, so we can grab that. So let's go back here. So in here I'm going to grab the params. All right, so this param here is basically have some interface. So let's create the interface up here. So I'm going to do interface, and I'm going to call this interface block detail. Okay, so let's set params. The param, it should be have ID, because remember we set the ID in this folder here. So we can say ID, and the ID it should be string, just like that. And now we can put the type here. So let's say I block detail, just like that. When I hover the params, as you can see here, we have the ID, it should be string. All right, cool. So now if I console log the params, okay, let's say params.id, and when we see into the terminal, we should be able to see 2 here, because as you can see in the browser, we're running the 2 road here. If I open that to 12 road, as you can see, it should be rendered at 12. So in here, what we need to do is we need to fetch data from the API depend on the params.id. So let's go back to the Google Chrome here, and let's click the fetching. And as you can see down here, I believe right here, as you can see, you can create a async function here, and this basically will fetch the, as you can see, the username is basically come from the params. Okay, we can create a couple of function here, and we can call that into the page component. All right, so I think I'm going to create, let's go back here, let's create function here, and I'm going to say async, and then the function name, it should be, let's say function, and I'm going to call this get detail block. Okay, so in here what I'm going to do is, let's create a variable called res, and set that equals to, it's going to be await for fetch. All right, so we are going to fetch the URL. So let's go back to Google Chrome, and in here let me see, when I go to /post/1, it should be get the ID 1. That's what we want. All right, so let's copy that, and let's go back here, and we are going to use a backtick, so we can put a variable inside in here. Let's remove the 1 right there and change that to ID. The ID is basically come from the get detail block function here. We can grab the ID here, and now we can call this get detail block to the block detail component. So in here we can say const data, and set that equals to await for the get detail block, just like that. And we can put the ID right here, just like that. Not ID, but we can say, let's do params.id. Okay, just like that. And of course it's going to be async function here, just like that. And the ID here, it should be, let's just put string. Okay, just like that. Let's go back and let's see what we have. So let's open the terminal, and I'm going to console log the data. So let's say console log data, save, and it's gonna be get undefined. What's we wrong doing here? The error here happened, that's because we don't return any value in this get detail block function. So what we can do here, we can say return response.json. Okay, just like that. And now we should be able to see this data here, which is the ID2, and we also get the title and the body. So I think here we can render the, let's do heads2 here, and I'm going to render the data.title, and also the paragraph here, I'm going to say data.body. Okay, just like that. And now we see the title and also the body here. Right, that's cool. And of course this data here have interface called interface pose, all right, that we create into the types. So let's save, and when we hover this data, as you can see, the data have a iPose types here. So when I click data dot, we have the suggestion here. All right, everything look perfectly good right now. So now let's try to see what happened if the string here, the URL is wrong. That means if we wrong fetching data, we get something warning, etc. So let's remove the R right here, and let's take a look what we have into the browser. As you can see, we have something went wrong. It's happened here because into the block here we add the error here. All right, this something went wrong. So this is also working into the children component inside the block here. So for example, I'm going to create another file here called, let's say, error.tsx, and I'm going to copy the content inside the block here, right? gonna copy all of this, and inside the ID I'm going to put that right here. And also I'm going to say something went wrong in this detail. So now when I save and let's take a look, when I refresh, and as you can see, something went wrong in this detail. So now the ID using the error right here. If you not put the error here, it should be using the parent error component. All right. So in this error component here, we have reset function. So let's go back to the documentation and looking for error because I forget what is that. So basically, there's a function that will like reload your browser. All right. So let's go back, and here I'm going to create a button, and let's do try again. Just like that. And here I'm going to add on click event. So let's do on click. Set equals to, it should be running the reset function. Now when I go back here, so now as you can see, we get this error when we click this, and we get some information here, which is the fetch is failed. All right. And I click that again, it's still failed because the URL here is wrong. Maybe in the real project, when you click try again, it should be fetching the data from the API, and the app will be work. Okay, so let's go back to the page.tsx, and I'm going to use the JSON placeholder, and now everything will look perfectly fine now. All right, cool. So how about the loading? So basically here we can create the loading, and let's do loading.tsx. Okay, so let's go back to the documentation because this is the better place to learn everything. So let's go to loading.js. Okay, this one. And as you can see, we can create the function. So let's copy this. Wait, copy that. Let's go back, paste that in here. And now let's go back to here. And when I refresh, it should be showing the loading, I believe, but it should be really fast. So I think I'm going to use the fast 3G. And let's empty cache and reload that. As you can see, we get the loading, right? So now what I'm going to showing you is, let's go back to the blog here, into the blog right here. Okay, so I'm going to change this title here to link, so that when I click this link, it should be go to the blog / whatever the ID. So let's go to this linking and navigating. So basically, to navigate between road, we can use link and also use a router. All right, so this link here is basically like an anchor tag. So let's use that into the card component here. So basically, I'm gonna say link. Okay, this link basically come from next/link, and I'm gonna say read more. Okay, link is basically have a props called ref. It's like a anchor tag, right? So in here, I'm gonna say /log/ whatever the ID. So we can put the item.id. Okay. So now save, and let's take a look here. So now when we refresh, you can see now we have this read more. When I click, it should be open the blog 1, and if I click that again, it should be open the blog 2. And also, of course, you can use a router, but I think this use router is helpful when you have like a button action. Okay, and if you want to have the better SEO, I think the better way is to use a link. Okay, because link is like anchor tag, is going to be really good for SEO. I think we have already covered the important thing about the Next 13, and in the next video we are going to create maybe the real project with this Next 13 in a app router version. All right, because this is really cool, and we are going to working with all this kind of stuff here, and maybe we are going to use Tailwind, and also we are going to use the image optimization, the custom form, etc. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful, guys, and see you in the next one.